The morning started like any other across the galaxy. The crystalline beings called Vorthak hummed their daily songs on their homeworld. The insect-like Nexari moved as one mind through their hive cities. The energy creatures known as luminals danced between stars as they had for millions of years. But something was wrong. Ambassador Kethvar of the Vorthak noticed it first. His crystal body flickered with confusion as he tried to contact the human embassy on his world. The building was there, but no one answered. The lights were off. The doors were locked. He sent a message to the Galactic Council. The humans are not responding to communications. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human colonies stood empty. Their massive space stations drifted silent in the void. Ships that had been docked at alien ports were gone, leaving only cold berths behind. The humans had vanished. Council leader Zixara called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime. The mood was strange. Some seemed worried, but many appeared relieved. Where could they have gone? Asked Speaker Voltan of the Luminals. His energy form pulsed with concern. Does it matter? Kethavar's crystal voice rang sharp and clear. The humans were always a problem. Too violent, too unpredictable. Maybe they finally realized they did not belong here. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. The humans had been the galaxy's troublemakers for over 200 years. Ever since they had developed faster-than-light travel and burst onto the galactic scene, they had caused nothing but headaches. They asked too many questions. They refused to follow established rules. They fought wars that others thought were pointless. They explored dangerous places that civilized beings avoided. They traded with anyone, even species that others considered enemies. They were warmongers, said General Thakor of the Skarn Empire. His scaled face showed disgust. Always preparing for conflicts that did not exist. Always building weapons and defenses. They were primitive, added Dr. Nexith of the Nexari. The hive mind spoke through one of its many bodies. Their chaotic thinking brought disorder to our perfect systems. The council reviewed the evidence. Every human settlement was empty but undamaged. No signs of struggle or forced evacuation. Their technology was gone, but they had left behind basic structures and equipment. It looked like they had simply packed up and left. No distress signals, reported the communications officer. No goodbye messages. No explanation at all. Good riddance, Kethvar declared. Perhaps now the galaxy can return to proper order. The vote was unanimous. The council declared humanity's departure a natural resolution to galactic tensions. They began making plans to divide up human territories among the remaining species. News of the humans' disappearance spread quickly. On Vorthak worlds, crystal beings sang songs of celebration. The Nexari hives buzzed with satisfaction. Even the peaceful luminals seemed brighter, as if a weight had been lifted from their consciousness. Finally, said Dr. Velkan, a famous Vorthak philosopher, the galaxy's children have learned their place. Humanity was holding us back with their chaos and violence. Now we can advance to new heights of civilization. The media agreed. Broadcasts across the galaxy painted the humans' departure as a victory for peace and order. Headlines read, "Galaxy united at last and the end of the human problem." But not everyone celebrated. Captain Mordek of the Outer Rim Patrol noticed something odd. His ship had been scheduled to meet a human cargo vessel at the edge of Skarn space. The rendezvous point was empty but not abandoned. The humans had left marker buoys with encrypted messages. When he decoded them, the messages were simple. Safe travels. Watch your backs. Good luck. Strange advice from a species that was supposedly running away. Dr. Lin Ara, a young Nexari scientist, found herself missing her human colleagues. She had worked with them on communication protocols for years. They had an odd way of thinking that somehow made sense of problems that baffled the hive mind. Their chaos helped us think in new ways, she told her supervisors, but they dismissed her concerns. The hive mind was perfect. It did not need chaos. On the mining world of Keftar, Foreman Grulak discovered that his human workers had not just left. They had also shut down several deep mining operations and sealed the tunnels. When he asked why, his remaining workers shrugged. The humans said the deeper levels were dangerous, explained one of the Keftari miners. They would not tell us why. They just said to stay away, Grulak scoffed. Humans were always seeing dangers that did not exist. He ordered the seals broken and mining resumed. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Humans had left behind warnings, advice, and strange precautions that other species ignored. After all, what could primitive humans know that advanced civilizations did not? The Galactic Council began dividing human space. The Vorthak claimed the most developed systems. The Nexari took agricultural worlds. The Skarn Empire eyed territories near their borders with hungry interest. A new age begins, announced Council leader Zixara. Without human interference, we can finally achieve the perfect galactic civilization our ancestors dreamed of. The first week passed peacefully. The second week brought minor disputes over territorial claims, but nothing serious. By the third week, the Council was already planning grand projects that would have been impossible with humans constantly raising objections. But small problems began to appear. Trade route through asteroid fields suddenly became dangerous. Human ships had somehow navigated it safely for decades, but now other vessels reported close calls and equipment failures. The route had to be abandoned. Several diplomatic missions failed when alien languages could not be properly translated. Humans had always handled the difficult communication problems, but their translation methods were considered too informal and chaotic for serious diplomacy. Pirates began attacking shipping lanes that had been safe for years. The attacks seemed random, but they were always in areas where human patrol ships had once operated. Minor adjustments, the Council declared, growing pains as we adapt to a better system. Most citizens believed them. The problems were small after all. Nothing that advanced galactic civilization could not handle. Dr. Zarthek, a Vorthak researcher, spent his time reviewing old Council records. Something bothered him about the human departure, but he could not identify what. The more he studied, the more questions arose. Why had humans been present at every major crisis over the past century? Why did problems always seem to resolve themselves when humans were involved? And why did their solutions often involve methods that made no logical sense but somehow worked? He found records of trade disputes that humans had mediated with bizarre compromises that satisfied no one but prevented wars. He discovered reports of exploration missions where humans had avoided disasters through what seemed like pure luck or paranoia. Most disturbing were the military records. Humans had fought in dozens of small conflicts that other species barely noticed. They claimed to be protecting trade routes or defending colonies, but the battles seemed pointless. Who were they really fighting? As the third week ended, Zarthek made a troubling discovery. He found communication logs showing that humans had been in regular contact with someone or something outside the galaxy. The messages were heavily encrypted, but the timing was suspicious. The communications had stopped exactly one day before humanity disappeared. Zarthek tried to share his findings with the Council, but they were too busy celebrating and planning their new golden age. His warnings were dismissed as paranoid speculation. After all, what could possibly go wrong? The galaxy was finally free of human chaos and violence. Peace and order would surely follow. The humans were gone, and that was all that mattered, or so they thought. 3 weeks after humanity vanished, the first real problems began. It started with what seemed like a simple border dispute. The Nexari hive mind wanted to expand into the outer rim territories that humans had once controlled. The land was good for farming, and the Nexari needed more food production worlds. But the Skarn Empire also wanted those worlds. They claimed ancient rights to the territory, rights that went back thousands of years before humans ever arrived. In the old days, such disputes were common. But they always got resolved somehow. Usually a human diplomat would show up and suggest some strange compromise that no one liked, but everyone could live with. This time, no human diplomat appeared. General Takir of the Skarn Empire sent a message to the Nexari. Those worlds belong to us. Withdraw your colony ships or face the consequences. The Nexari responded through their collective consciousness. We reject your claim. These worlds will feed our people. We will not be stopped. The Galactic Council tried to intervene. They sent their best diplomats to mediate. But something was wrong. The talks went nowhere. Ambassador Kethvar found himself frustrated. Why can we not reach an agreement? He asked his staff. This should be simple. His aide, a young Vorthak named Pelthor, studied the records. In similar disputes, humans often suggested creative solutions. They would find ways for both sides to benefit. Nonsense, Kethvar replied. We do not need human chaos. Logic will solve this, but logic failed. The Vorthak proposals were perfectly reasonable and completely unacceptable to both sides. The Nexari wanted the worlds for farming. The Skarn wanted them for military bases. There was no logical compromise. On the fourth week, the Skarn Empire attacked. Their warships struck 3 Nexari colony vessels. The hive mind retaliated immediately, sending swarms of fighter craft to destroy Skarn outposts. Within days, both empires were mobilizing their full military forces. The council called emergency sessions. They demanded both sides cease fighting. But something strange happened during the peace talks. The translation systems failed. For the first time in decades, the universal translators could not properly convert Skarn battle language into something the Nexari could understand. The hive mind's collective speech patterns confused the Skarn delegates. Misunderstandings multiplied. Their demands make no sense, General Thacker complained. What do they mean by collective territorial harmony? The Nexari were equally confused. The Skarn concept of honor-bounded space does not translate. We cannot negotiate with unclear terms. Dr. Linara, the young Nexari scientist, remembered working with human linguists. They had always handled the difficult translation problems. Somehow they could understand meaning even when words failed. Humans had a gift for communication, she told her supervisors. They could bridge any language gap. The hive mind is perfect, came the reply. We do not need primitive human methods. But the translations kept failing. Ancient languages, quantum encrypted communications, and emotional concepts all proved impossible for the automated systems. The galaxy discovered that humans had been quietly handling all the difficult linguistic problems for generations. As the war between Nexari and Skarn spread, other problems emerged. Trade routes began failing across the galaxy. The main shipping lane through the Kepler Nebula became too dangerous to use. Pirates attacked cargo vessels daily. Captain Mordek studied the attack patterns. This makes no sense, he told his crew. These lanes were safe for decades. What changed? His navigator, an elderly Vorthak named Quilzar, checked the old patrol schedules. Human ships used to patrol these routes, but their patrol patterns were random and unpredictable. Random patrols are inefficient, Mordek replied. We will establish proper, logical patrol schedules. The new patrols failed completely. The pirates seemed to know exactly when and where the patrol ships would appear. They timed their attacks perfectly to avoid detection. How do they know our schedules? Mordek wondered. Quilzar had studied human military tactics in school. Humans never used predictable patterns. They said it made them harder to counter. That is chaotic and wasteful, Mordek declared. But privately he began to worry. The problem spread like a disease through galactic civilization. On Vorthak worlds, their beautiful crystal cities began experiencing technical failures. Computer systems crashed without warning. Automated factories produced defective goods. Transport networks suffered mysterious delays. Dr. Velkan, the philosopher who had celebrated humanity's departure, found himself baffled by the malfunctions. Our technology is perfect, he insisted. These failures should be impossible. His assistant showed him maintenance records from the past century. Humans often fixed these impossible problems. Their repair methods were unorthodox but effective. We do not need chaotic human methods, Velkan declared. But the problems continued. The Vorthak discovered that their logical minds could not adapt when systems behaved illogically. Their perfect crystal technology required perfect conditions. When unexpected variables appeared, the Vorthak could not find solutions. Humans had been quietly fixing these problems for decades. Their chaotic thinking patterns could find answers that pure logic missed. Meanwhile, the luminal energy beings faced their own crisis. Their consciousness began to flicker and dim. For the first time in eons, they felt incomplete. Speaker Voltan tried to understand what was happening. Our energy patterns are destabilizing, he reported to the council. We feel less alive. Dr. Kashara, a luminal scientist, studied the problem. Our consciousness thrives on complexity and unpredictability. But our environment has become too orderly. The luminals had unknowingly fed on human emotional energy for generations. Human chaos, creativity, and unpredictability had provided the random variables that kept luminal consciousness healthy. Without humans, the luminals began to fade. As the 5th week ended, the galaxy was in chaos. The Nexari-Skarn War had spread to 6 star systems. Trade had collapsed on dozens of worlds. The Vorthak cities were failing. The luminals were dying. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. For the first time in centuries, They could not agree on anything. We must stop this. War, demanded council leader. Zixara. The Skarn have ancient rights, argued General. Thakur. The collective needs those worlds, replied the Nexari representative. Both claims have logical merit, stated Ambassador Kethvar, but logic provides no clear solution. The debates went in circles. Without human mediators to suggest impossible compromises, the council was paralyzed. Dr. Zarthek, the Vorthak researcher, continued studying old records. His findings became more disturbing each day. He discovered that humans had been involved in every major galactic crisis over the past 2 centuries. They had prevented wars that no one else saw coming. They had solved technical problems that baffled advanced civilizations. They had maintained systems that others thought ran themselves. Most troubling were the military records. Humans had fought countless small battles against enemies that other species never identified. They called them border incidents or piracy, suppression. But the patterns suggested something larger. Zarthek found weapons reports describing technology that did not match any known galactic civilization, energy signatures that seemed to come from outside the galaxy itself. What had humans been fighting? And why had they kept it secret? As he dug deeper, Zarthek made a chilling discovery. The human military had been growing stronger every year, not weaker. They had been building weapons and defenses at an increasing rate. They had not been preparing for galactic wars. They had been preparing for something else entirely, something that other species could not see or understand. As the 6th week began, reports came in from the galactic rim. Deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual energy signatures moving between stars. The signals were faint but growing stronger. The automated defense systems tried to identify the source but failed. The signals used no known technology. Patterns. Dr. Zarthek realized with growing horror that the galaxy had lost more than just humanity's diplomatic skills and technical knowledge. They had lost their guardians, and something was coming. 2 months after humanity vanished, the galaxy was dying. The war between the Nexari and Skarn Empire had consumed 12 star systems. Billions of beings were dead or displaced. Refugee ships crowded around neutral worlds, straining resources to the breaking point. But the fighting was just the beginning of the galaxy's problems. On the ancient world of Kythera Prime, something stirred in the depths of forgotten ruins. The planet had been dead for millions of years, its original inhabitants long extinct. But deep beneath the surface, automated systems began to wake up. Dr. Yulsek, an archaeologist studying the ruins, noticed the first signs. The power readings are increasing, she reported to her team. Something is activating the old machinery. Her assistant, a young Vorthak named Krell-An, checked the monitoring equipment. This should not be possible. These systems have been dormant for eons. But the ancient Kythera technology was awakening. Massive constructs deep underground began to move. Energy fields that had been stable for millions of years started to fluctuate. Dr. Yulsek tried to contact the human archaeological team that usually handled such situations. But there were no humans to call. For decades, human scholars had been the galaxy's experts on ancient dangers. They explored forgotten worlds and cataloged mysterious artifacts. Other species considered them reckless. But they had always managed to keep ancient threats contained. Now there was no one to sound the warning. The Kythera ruins erupted in a pillar of dark energy that could be seen from orbit. Ancient war machines, built by a civilization that had destroyed itself long before any current species evolved, began to emerge from underground bunkers. The machines were perfectly preserved and utterly hostile. They attacked everything that moved, treating all current galactic life as invaders to be eliminated. Within hours, they had overwhelmed the research station. Within days, they controlled the entire planet. And their signals were spreading to other Kythera sites. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council received the distress calls with growing panic. Ancient automated defenses are activating across 17 worlds, reported the emergency coordinator. The machines are hostile to all current life forms. How is this possible? Demanded Council leader Zixara. These sites have been stable for millions of years. Dr. Zarthek, who had been studying human records for weeks, found the answer in archived files. Humans had been monitoring these sites constantly. They maintained suppression fields and containment protocols. That is impossible, declared Ambassador Kethvar. We would have known about such operations. But the evidence was undeniable. Human research teams had been quietly maintaining safety systems on hundreds of ancient worlds. They had prevented awakening of sleeping technologies, contained dangerous artifacts, and monitored sites that other species ignored. They had done it all in secret, never asking for recognition or payment. As the Kythera machines spread their destructive rampage, other ancient threats began to stir. On distant worlds, forgotten weapons platforms came online. Dead civilizations' final vengeance protocols activated. Sleeping guardians woke up to find their creators long gone. The galaxy discovered that it was built on a foundation of barely contained ancient dangers, and humanity had been the invisible force keeping that foundation stable. Meanwhile, the Vorthak civilization faced its own collapse. Their crystal cities, marvels of logical engineering, were failing in cascading system crashes. The problem started small but grew exponentially. A minor malfunction in one district would spread to neighboring areas, then to entire cities. Dr. Velkan stood in his laboratory, watching his equipment shut down piece by piece. "This makes no logical sense," he muttered. "Our systems are perfect." His assistant showed him maintenance logs from the past century. Humans often fix these problems, but their methods were unconventional. Velkan studied the human repair records with growing amazement. The humans had used techniques that violated every principle of logical engineering. They would repair one system by deliberately introducing chaos into another. They would solve problems by creating new problems that somehow balanced out the original issues. "This is madness," Velkan declared. "No rational being would use such methods." But the methods worked. Somehow human chaos had provided the random variables that kept Vorthak technology stable. Their perfect crystal systems needed imperfection to function properly. Without human interference, the Vorthak machines were dying of their own perfection. The Nexari faced an even worse fate. The hive mind had always prided itself on perfect unity. Every Nexari thought the same thoughts and shared the same goals. They were a collective consciousness that spanned thousands of worlds, but something was going wrong with their mental connection. Dr. Lin Ara noticed it first. "The hive song is becoming monotonous," she reported to her supervisors. "We are losing complexity in our collective thoughts." The problem spread quickly. Nexari colonies began reporting identical ideas and responses to every situation. Creativity vanished. Innovation stopped. The hive mind was becoming a single, unchanging thought pattern. "We are achieving perfect unity," the supervisors replied. "This is what we have always wanted." But Lin Ara remembered her work with humans. Their chaotic individual thoughts had somehow enriched the hive mind. When humans were present, the collective consciousness became more complex and creative. Humans had provided the mental diversity that kept the hive mind healthy. Without their chaotic input, the Nexari were becoming a stagnant pool of identical thoughts. Worse, the hive mind began to fragment. Different colonies started developing slightly different thought patterns. Without human mediators to provide common ground, these small differences grew into major splits. Within weeks, the Nexari were no longer one people. They had become dozens of separate hive minds, each convinced that the others were corrupted or insane. The fragmentation led to civil war as different factions tried to forcibly reunify the collective consciousness. As the galaxy tore itself apart, the luminal energy beings faced extinction. Speaker Voltan's light grew dimmer each day. "Our consciousness is fading," he reported weakly. "We can barely maintain coherent thought." The luminals had discovered their terrible dependence on human emotional energy. For millions of years, they had fed on the complexity and unpredictability of organic life. But other galactic species were too ordered, too predictable. Only humans had provided the emotional chaos that luminal consciousness required. Their hopes, fears, dreams, and contradictions had been like food for energy beings. Without humans, the luminals were starving to death. As the third month began, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Trade networks had collapsed completely. Communication systems failed regularly. Ancient threats were awakening. Civilizations were fragmenting or dying. The most advanced species in the galaxy were helpless to solve problems that had never existed when humans were present. Captain Mordek, now commanding a refugee rescue ship, made a disturbing discovery. His vessel had been trying to evacuate civilians from war zones, but the navigation systems kept failing. "The stellar cartography is wrong," his navigator reported. "The charts show safe routes that no longer exist." Mordek studied the navigation data. These charts were compiled by human explorers over the past 2 centuries. How can they be wrong? But the routes were failing because humans had been maintaining them. They had quietly cleared debris from shipping lanes, neutralized space hazards, and marked dangerous areas. They had built an invisible infrastructure that other species had taken for granted. Without human maintenance, space itself was becoming dangerous again. Deep in the galactic archives, Dr. Zarthek made the most terrifying discovery of all. He found encrypted human military communications dating back decades. The messages spoke of external threats and border containment. They mentioned battles fought in empty space between galaxies, against enemies that used unknown technology. The communications painted a picture of humanity as the galaxy's secret defenders, fighting a war that other species never knew existed. The final message in the archive was dated 1 day before humanity disappeared. It was from Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the human Deep Space Fleet. Perimeter breached in 17 sectors. Unknown hostiles advancing on galactic rim. Estimated time to core world 6 months. Recommend immediate evacuation of all human personnel. Cannot maintain defense without support. Zarthek stared at the message in horror. Humanity had not abandoned the galaxy out of spite or disappointment. They had been forced to retreat, and whatever had driven them away was still coming. As if summoned by his thoughts, alarms began blaring throughout the archive facility. Emergency broadcasts flooded all communication channels. Unknown vessels detected at galactic rim. Configuration does not match any known technology. All ships are advised to avoid the outer sectors. Dr. Zarthek rushed to his console and tried to contact the Galactic Council. But the communication networks were failing again, another system that humans had quietly maintained. He was alone with the terrible knowledge that the galaxy was about to face an enemy it had never seen, without the guardians who had protected it for centuries. The real war was about to begin. 4 months after humanity's departure, the truth began to emerge from the chaos. Dr. Zarthek had spent weeks trying to reach the Galactic Council with his discoveries about human military communications. But the Council was too busy dealing with crises to listen to one researcher's theories. The Nexari Civil War had split into 6 separate conflicts. The Skarn Empire was conquering territory at an alarming rate. The Vorthak cities were failing one by one. Ancient Kithara machines had overwhelmed 43 worlds. And now, unknown ships were moving through the outer rim of the galaxy. Zarthek finally managed to get a message through to Captain Veltar of the Luminal Energy Beings. The Luminals were dying, but their energy forms could still travel faster than any physical ship. "I need you to investigate something," Zarthek told the flickering being. "There are human installations in the void between galaxies, hidden bases that other species never knew existed." Veltar's light pulsed weakly. "Why should I waste my remaining energy on human mysteries?" "Because I think they were protecting us from something. And that something is coming." Veltar considered this. The Luminals were dying anyway. Perhaps solving this mystery would give meaning to their final days. The energy being launched himself into the dark spaces between galaxies, following coordinates from the archived human messages. What he found there changed everything. Floating in the cosmic void were massive human battle stations. They were larger than anything humans had ever built in normal space, bristling with weapons that dwarfed galactic military technology. But the stations were abandoned, and they showed signs of fierce combat. Veltar explored the largest station, his energy form passing through its darkened corridors. He found battle damage everywhere. Alien technology had melted through armor plating. Strange energy weapons had carved tunnels through solid metal. In the command center, he discovered logs from Admiral Sarah Chen. Day 847 of the Void War. Her recorded voice echoed through empty chambers. "The enemy has adapted to our plasma cannons. They are learning faster than we anticipated. Recommend fallback to secondary positions." More logs painted a picture of desperate fighting against an implacable foe. Humans had been battling entities from outside the galaxy for decades, using technology and tactics that other species had never seen. Day 1203 of the Void War. "We have identified the enemy's primary weakness. They cannot adapt to chaotic strategies. Our unpredictable thinking patterns confuse their learning algorithms. This may be our only advantage. Day 1847 of the Void War. Enemy breakthrough in Sector 7. They have learned to predict our chaos. Recommend immediate evacuation of forward positions. The galaxy is no longer defensible. The final log was desperate and bitter. Day 2019 of the Void War. This is Admiral Chen's final transmission. The enemy has breached our perimeter. They will reach galactic space within 6 months. We cannot hold them without support, and the Council refuses to acknowledge the threat. Humanity is withdrawing to prepare new defenses. To my fellow humans listening to this, remember what we fought for. To everyone else, good luck. You'll need it. Veltar transmitted his findings back to Zarthek, who finally understood the scope of humanity's hidden role. The humans had not been primitive warmongers. They had been battle-hardened veterans of a war the galaxy never knew existed. Their paranoid military preparations had been rational responses to a very real threat. Their exploration of dangerous territories had been reconnaissance missions. Their unpredictable patrol routes had been defensive strategies. Their chaotic thinking had been their greatest weapon against enemies who learned from every encounter. Zarthek shared this information with anyone who would listen, but most officials dismissed his claims as desperate speculation. Impossible, declared Ambassador Kethvar. We would have detected these external threats with our sensors. Human records show that these entities exist in dimensions we cannot perceive, Zarthek explained. Our technology is not designed to detect them. Then how did primitive humans detect them? Zarthek had found the answer in archived research files. Human brains process information differently than ours. Their chaotic neural patterns can perceive patterns that escape logical analysis. The revelation was too much for many to accept. The idea that inferior humans had been protecting superior civilizations challenged everything the galaxy believed about itself. But evidence continued to mount. Captain Mordek, still running refugee operations, made his own discovery. While evacuating a human research station, his crew found a hidden laboratory filled with exotic technology. "What is this equipment?" asked his chief engineer. Mordek studied the strange devices. They seemed designed to detect and analyze energy patterns that normal sensors could not register. The humans were monitoring something we cannot see. In the laboratory's computer systems, they found decades of observational data. The files showed energy signatures moving through interdimensional space, gradually approaching the galaxy. The data was presented in ways that made no sense to logical minds. Human researchers had used intuitive analysis methods that seemed random but somehow worked. They were tracking invasion fleets, Mordek realized. Enemies approaching from outside our reality. Dr. Linara, the Nexari scientist, made her own disturbing discovery. While reviewing communication protocols, she found evidence that humans had been serving as psychological stabilizers for multiple species. They were managing our mental health, she reported to what remained of the hive mind leadership. Human emotional patterns somehow balanced our collective consciousness. The evidence showed that humans had been secretly providing psychological support to dozens of civilizations. Their chaotic emotions had prevented other species from falling into stagnation or madness. The Vorthak needed human unpredictability to prevent their logic from becoming recursive loops. Linara explained. The luminals fed on human emotional energy. Even our hive mind required human individuality to maintain healthy diversity. "This is impossible," the collective replied. "We are superior beings. We do not need primitive human support." But the fragmentation of the hive mind told a different story. Without human emotional input, the Nexari were losing their ability to function as a unified consciousness. Meanwhile, the ancient Kithara machines continued their rampage across the galaxy. Dr. Yulsek, one of the few archaeologists to survive the initial awakening, made a crucial discovery. Hidden in human archaeological records, she found detailed maps of every Kithara site in the galaxy. The humans had not just been studying these locations, they had been actively maintaining containment systems. "Look at this," she showed her remaining team members. Humans installed suppression fields at every major site. They have been keeping these machines dormant for decades. The containment systems were works of genius, but they required constant maintenance and adjustment. Human engineers had been quietly visiting these sites for generations, making small repairs and upgrades that prevented ancient weapons from awakening. When humans disappeared, the containment systems began to fail. The machines woke up to find their creators long dead and their suppressors gone. As the fourth month ended, the galaxy's leaders finally began to accept the truth. Humanity had not been the galaxy's problem. They had been the solution to problems that other species could not even perceive. Council leader Zixara called an emergency session. "We need to contact humanity immediately," she declared. "We must ask them to return." "How?" asked Ambassador Kethvar. "We do not know where they went." Dr. Zarthek had found clues in the archived communications. They withdrew to prepare new defenses. They may be establishing fallback positions in other galaxies. "Then we must send messages to every nearby galaxy," Zixara decided. "We must tell them we understand now. We must ask for their help." But even as they prepared their desperate pleas, reports came in from the outer rim. The unknown ships were no longer content to lurk in empty space. They were beginning to probe the galaxy's defenses. Captain Deckmore, commanding a border patrol vessel, sent the first eyewitness report. "Ships unlike anything in our databases. They adapt to our weapons in real time. Energy blasts that should destroy them are absorbed and redirected. They learn from every engagement. Retreat immediately," came the order from Fleet Command. "We tried. They followed us. They are studying our faster-than-light technology. I think they are learning how to track us through hyperspace." The transmission ended abruptly. As news of the first contact spread, panic gripped the galaxy. These were the enemies that humanity had been fighting in secret. These were the entities that had driven Earth's defenders back after decades of war. And now they were here, in galactic space with no human guardians left to stop them. Dr. Zarthek made one final discovery in the human archives. A message from Admiral Chen, recorded before humanity's departure. "To whoever finds this record, we tried to warn you. We tried to show you the threats you could not see. You called us warmongers when we prepared for battles you denied existed. You called us primitive when we solved problems you could not understand. You called us chaotic when we brought order to systems too complex for your logic. We are leaving not in anger but in necessity. We cannot protect you and fight this war at the same time." 1 year after humanity's departure, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Half of all civilized worlds were either conquered, destroyed, or abandoned. The great cities of the Vorthak lay dark and silent, their crystal spires cracked and lifeless. The Nexari had fractured into warring tribes that could barely remember their former unity. The luminal energy beings flickered like dying stars, their consciousness fading into the cosmic background. Ambassador Kethvar stood in what remained of the Galactic Council chambers. Most of the seats were empty now. Many species had simply vanished, their worlds consumed by war or ancient machines. Others had retreated into isolation, trying to protect what little they had left. "Status report," he said wearily to the few remaining delegates. The reports were uniformly terrible. The Skarn Empire had conquered 40% of known space before their own worlds fell to Kithara machines. Ancient automated weapons had sterilized hundreds of systems. The civil wars between Nexari factions had spread chaos across entire sectors, and the entities from beyond the galaxy were still coming. Captain Veltar, now barely a whisper of light, delivered the most frightening news. "The unknown ships have reached the mid-rim territories. They have learned to use our own technology against us. They pilot captured vessels better than their original crews." "How many ships do they have?" asked Kethvar. "We cannot count them. They appear to be self-replicating. Every destroyed ship provides materials for 2 more. Dr. Zarthek, who had spent the year trying to understand humanity's true role, shared his latest findings. "I have analyzed their attack patterns. These entities learn from every encounter. They adapt faster than any organic intelligence could manage. Then how did humans fight them for so long?" "Chaos," Zarthek replied. "Human unpredictability was their greatest weapon. These entities cannot adapt to truly random strategies. But we think logically. We are predictable. They learn our patterns and counter them. The truth was bitter. Every advanced species in the galaxy thought in orderly, logical ways. Their minds worked according to understandable principles. They could be studied, analyzed, and predicted. But human minds were chaotic. They made decisions based on emotion, intuition, and pure randomness. They could change strategies without reason, fight battles that made no sense, and solve problems through methods that defied logic. against enemies that learned from every encounter. Chaos was the only effective defense. "We need the humans back," declared Council Leader Zixara. "They are our only hope." The galaxy had been sending desperate messages for months. Pleas for help broadcast to every corner of known space. Apologies for past arrogance. Offers of anything humanity might want in exchange for their return. Most messages went unanswered. A few received brief responses. "We are engaged elsewhere or unable to assist at this time." Cold. Formal communications that revealed nothing about humanity's location or plans. The closest thing to hope came from an unexpected source. On the mining world of Keftar, Foreman Grulak had ignored human warnings and reopened the deep tunnels they had sealed. The miners had worked for months, extracting valuable minerals from the planetary core. Then they broke through into something that should not have existed. "It is a chamber," Grulak reported to the Emergency Council. "Huge, made of some kind of metal we cannot identify. And it contains things." The chamber held rows of dormant machines. They were clearly of human design, but more advanced than anything humans had built in known space. Each machine was the size of a small building, covered in weapons and sensors. Dr. Yulsek, the archaeologist, examined the discovery. "These are not mining or construction robots. They are war machines. The humans were building a secret army." In the chamber's control room, they found a message from Admiral Chen. "If you are reading this, then the outer defenses have fallen, and humanity has withdrawn to secondary positions. These units are our gift to the galaxy that scorned us. They are programmed to defend all sentient life regardless of species. Activation codes are included. Use them wisely. And remember, we never stopped fighting for you even when you wanted us gone." The machines were incredible. Each one was capable of fighting an entire fleet. Their weapons could punch through any known armor. Their shields could withstand attacks that would destroy planets. But there were only a few dozen of them. Against the swarms of entities pouring into the galaxy, they would barely slow the advance. More discoveries followed. On abandoned human worlds, exploring teams found hidden bunkers filled with advanced technology, weapons that fired concentrated chaos energy, shields that randomized their own frequency patterns, ships that changed their configuration mid-flight. Everything was designed around the principle of unpredictability, human engineering that embraced chaos as a fundamental force. But even with these gifts, the galaxy's defenders were losing ground. The entities from beyond had adapted to conventional warfare completely. They could predict fleet movements, counter standard tactics, and turn captured technology against its creators. Only the random human machines posed any real threat. Captain Mordek, now commanding one of the human chaos ships, reported from the front lines. "These vessels are impossible to pilot logically. They respond to emotional commands and intuitive decisions. It is maddening. But effective?" asked Kethvar hopefully. "Yes. The enemy cannot predict our actions because we cannot predict them ourselves. But we are too few. We need thousands of ships like this, not dozens." As the entities pressed deeper into galactic space, they began to change tactics. Instead of simply conquering worlds, they started studying the inhabitants. Captured beings were analyzed, their thought patterns mapped and recorded. The entities were learning how galactic civilizations thought. Soon, even human chaos technology would not be enough. Dr. Linara, working with the few remaining Nexari factions, made a terrifying discovery. They are not just learning our military tactics. They are learning our psychology. They will soon be able to predict our behavior perfectly. "Then we are doomed," Kethavar replied bitterly. But Linara had found something else in the human records. Not necessarily. The humans left us more than weapons and ships. They left us knowledge. She had discovered human psychological warfare manuals, documents that explained how to think chaotically, how to make random decisions, how to embrace unpredictability as a survival tool. "We can learn to think like humans," she explained. "We can train ourselves to be chaotic." It was a desperate plan. Every instinct of advanced galactic civilization fought against chaos and randomness, but it was their only chance. Training centers were established on the few remaining safe worlds. Beings who had spent their entire lives thinking logically tried to learn random thought patterns. Vorthak crystals attempted to embrace imperfection. Nexari individuals practiced thinking outside the collective consciousness. The results were mixed. Some beings showed aptitude for chaotic thinking, Others found it impossible to abandon their logical nature. Many went insane trying to reconcile order with chaos. But gradually, a new kind of galactic military emerged. Mixed crews of different species trained to think unpredictably, operating human chaos technology with random strategies. They called themselves the Chaos Fleet. As the second year of humanity's absence began, the Chaos Fleet achieved its first major victory. A combined force of human war machines and chaos-trained crews managed to destroy an entire entity invasion fleet. The victory came at a terrible cost. Most of the Chaos ships were destroyed, and hundreds of trained crew members died. But for the first time in months, the Galactic Defenders had actually won a battle. News of the victory spread hope across the surviving worlds. Perhaps the galaxy could learn to defend itself. Perhaps humanity's gifts would be enough. But then the entities adapted again. They had studied the battle recordings. They learned to recognize chaos patterns. They developed new tactics designed to counter unpredictable behavior. The second Chaos Fleet engagement was a disaster. The entities anticipated every random strategy and countered them perfectly. "They have learned chaos," reported Captain Mordek before his ship was destroyed. "They can predict unpredictability itself." As the news reached the council chambers, Ambassador Kethvar finally accepted the truth. The galaxy was dying and nothing they could do would save it. In desperation, he authorized a final broadcast to the void between galaxies. "Humanity, if you can hear this, we understand now. We know what you were protecting us from. We know how wrong we were about everything. We called you primitive when you were our guardians. We dismissed your warnings when you were saving our lives. We celebrated your departure when you were our only hope. Please, if any mercy remains in your hearts, come home, help us. We are sorry. We are so terribly sorry." The message was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every coordinate humans had ever mentioned, repeated until the transmission arrays burned out from overuse. For days, there was no response. Then, as the last few council members prepared to evacuate to the galaxy's core worlds, a single transmission came through the chaos. "Your apology is noted. Unfortunately, we are currently engaged in preventing the destruction of 17 other galaxies. These entities are not limited to your local area. This is a multi-dimensional invasion affecting thousands of galactic clusters.